Well, good morning, gang. Welcome to Highland again today. So glad to have you here, and welcome to everybody joining us online as well. We are in Matthew chapter 25 today, so if you have your Bible, would invite you to open there, because for the last few weeks and concluding this series today, we've been taking a look at what Jesus had to say about his return, the end of time, when we and everyone who has ever lived will be judged. And we're just spending a few weeks on this subject and looking only at this one section in Matthew where Jesus spoke about this. But this topic of Jesus' return, the end of time, occurs throughout the Bible. And so it's talked about in books like Isaiah, Daniel, Joel, 1 Thessalonians, 2 Peter, Revelation. All of those passages speak about this topic. But all of these passages are highly debated because they are difficult to understand. Prophecies about the future are always vague and veiled. None of the writers of the Bible just come right out and speak about it plainly. It's all kind of spoken about in what we might modern day call riddles. They are hard to understand pieces. For example, in the Old Testament book of Daniel, he was writing about the persecution that would take place, toward the end of time, and he said that it would last for times, and half a time. Like, what does that mean? And so people have guessed about that throughout the ages, trying to put years on that, exactly what that means in time frames and when Jesus would return. But it's difficult to figure out exactly what it means. Or in Revelation, what did John mean when he spoke about the four great beasts coming up out of the sea? Or here, even in this passage in Matthew where Jesus is speaking about it, he talks about there is going to appear an abomination that causes desolation standing in the holy place. And so people have debated about, has that already happened? Is that something that took place after Jesus spoke it, but it's in our past? Or is that something that is yet to come? And so people debate, and it is difficult to understand. It's like trying to solve a riddle about finding a buried treasure. There have been a lot of movies made with that kind of a theme. Like, there's a treasure that's been buried. There are clues. There's nothing that says, here's exactly where it is. No GPS coordinates, but it's this poem, these riddles that you've got to figure out what they mean. And so you've seen these kinds of movies, like Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones. He's following all these clues to try to find the Holy Grail. Or Nicolas Cage in National Treasure. They have the Freemasons that have buried this treasure, and they've left all these clues and symbols around Washington, D.C., and he's trying to figure out what they mean. Or Matthew McConaughey in Fool's Gold. There's a buried pirate's treasure, and there are these clues in books that are written in poetic form. They don't make any sense. You read them and you go, well, that could mean anything. But then when they show you, oh, this is what it means, then you go, oh, okay, I see how that means that then. I think prophecies are going to be that way as they are fulfilled. We look at the Bible now and we read those things about times, and half a time, and we wonder what it means. But once it is fulfilled, then we're going to go, oh, that makes sense. I see what that means now. I get it. In fact, in the book of Daniel, Daniel actually writes a paragraph that tells us that's what it's going to be. You're not going to understand it right now, but later you will. Listen to this. This is in Daniel chapter 12. He wrote, at that time, Michael is an angel the Bible talks about, archangel, a lead angel, one of the higher up angels in the hierarchy. And he's saying at that time, so it's talking about at the time of the end of time, at that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. And there will be a time of distress such as not happened from the beginning of nations until then. So there's going to be a time of distress, of persecution, of tribulation. The Bible sometimes uses that word. But at that time, your people, whose people is he talking about? He explains, everyone whose name is found written in the book. So that's all believers. So at that time, your people, all believers, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake. So it's talking about people who have been dead and buried. Sleeping is a euphemism the Bible often uses for death. So that's what that means. So people who have died there, they've been buried. Some, they're going to awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So people who have followed Jesus and people who have evangelized are going to be rewarded at that time. But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll, that's what he's reading, until the time of the end. So this scroll that's talking about the end of time, roll it up and seal it until the end of time. And many will go here and there to increase their knowledge. They're going to look everywhere trying to figure out when is the end of time going to be. Verse 5, then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river, one on the opposite bank. And one of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled? See, he's wanting to know when. How long is it going to be before these things take place? When will the end of time be? When will this judgment take place? The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, it will be for time, times, and half a time. When's this going to take place? When's the end of time going to be? Time, times, and half a time. Oh, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that very much. When the power of the holy people has been fully broken, all these things will be completed. Now listen to what Daniel says. I heard what he said, but I didn't understand. Like that's kind of like us, right? I read it, I don't know what it means. So I asked, my Lord, what will the outcome of all this be? He replied, go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. So going back to that scroll, roll it up until the time of the end. You've seen it, but you don't know what it means, but just roll it up and seal it until the time of the end. It means you don't know what it means. You're not going to know what it means until it's fulfilled. When it happens, then it will all make sense. That's what Daniel is telling us about these prophecies. So we want to know, when's this going to happen? When will the end of time be? When will Jesus return? When is the day of judgment? Here's what the Bible teaches us. We don't know. Can't know. So what the Bible tells us is be ready every day. Live in that state of readiness. Be a spiritual prepper, so when the day comes, you are ready. So this is what Jesus talks about in Matthew 24. When they ask him, when will the end of time be? When are you going to return? He doesn't give them a direct answer. He gives them signs to look for. We talked about that last week. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, persecution, all that stuff is going to happen. But then Jesus tells them a parable about being ready. So let's kind of put all this together again, Matthew 24 and 25, and what we're getting ready to look at here today. You remember, if you've been here the last couple of weeks, if you haven't, here's kind of the tutorial to bring you up to speed. All of this discussion that Jesus has, all this direction he's giving his disciples about when the end of time will be, when Jesus is going to return, came out of a question that the disciples asked him. You remember they went to Jerusalem, they saw the temple, how big it was. You remember it was a 36-acre plot. The temple was sitting on it. Some of the stones weighed as much as 600 tons that they built this thing with. And the disciples are walking away saying to Jesus, oh, look at this place. This is magnificent, isn't it? Have you ever seen anything like this in your life? And Jesus was saying, one of these days, not one of these stones will be left on another. They'll all be thrown down. And they're going like, oh, that's got to be the end of time. Jesus, when is this going to happen? And that's when Jesus starts answering them. Look for these signs, wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes. So he tells them all of that stuff, and then he goes into this parable in chapter 25. So this parable that we're going to look at today is a continued explanation of this question, when is all this going to happen? So let's take a look at this and see what we can learn for our own lives. But before I read the parable, I want to set up what's going on. Because this parable that Jesus tells is about a wedding. And it's a first century Jewish wedding, so their weddings were not exactly like we do ours today. In the first century, the Jews would often arrange a marriage for their kids when their kids were young. And then when the kids got of age, they could choose whether or not they accepted that partner. Now, usually they did, but they could reject that if they wanted to. So they would grow up, they would choose to accept their parents' choice. And when they accepted it, when they said, yes, I'm all in for this, the couple would then be legally engaged, but they're not yet living together as husband and wife for as much as a year. So they're engaged, but they're living apart. During that year or so, the man would be building a home for them to live in, establishing a way to financially provide. And when he was ready, he would make the announcement, okay, all things are ready. I'm coming to get my bride. And then he would go at night to her and get her and take her home. And this day and evening were filled with ceremony and tradition and excitement. And the bridesmaids would go to the bride's house, and they would do their makeup and get mani-pedis, and they would play loud music and dance. I don't know what they did. I made that part up, okay? But they did go to the bride's house, and they had responsibilities that were there. So they would go, and their primary job, the bridesmaid's primary job, was to bring with them an oil lamp. And then at night, when the bridegroom had made his announcement and he was on his way, they would go all out and they would light the path for the bridegroom to come to the house. And this was all a part of the excitement and the anticipation. So with that understanding of a Jewish wedding, let's read this, chapter 25, beginning in verse 1. At that time, now remember, this is Jesus answering the question, when will the end come? And he's using this parable to teach them about it. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. All right, so this is not the husband getting 10 wives. These are the bridesmaids that we just talked about going out to light the way. 5 of them were foolish, 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but they didn't take any extra oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy, and they fell asleep. So envision this. There's been an engagement. There's been a lot of time go by, maybe a year, possibly even more. The groom is getting everything ready. He's building the house where he's going to take his bride to live. And now the announcement is made, today's the day. And they have all the ceremony that goes on. And then that evening, the bridesmaids are all ready. They're going to take their lamps out, light the way. The bridegroom's going to make the entrance. And so he said, I will be there. I will be there. I will be there soon. But there's an unexpected delay. It's taking longer for him to get there than they thought it would. They're all ready. They're all excited. But for some reason, the groom doesn't show up right away. It's taking him longer than they thought it would. So we don't know what it was. Cold feet, final touches on the house, his mother locking him in his room, saying, no, you can't get married. We don't know what it was. He's not showing up exactly when they thought he would, not as fast as they thought he would. Whatever it was, it's taking him longer. He said he was on his way, but he's not there yet. So imagine the scene at the bride's house. Bridesmaids show up, lamps lit, dresses on. They're all chattering with excitement. It's the big day, but then the hours wear on. And all of a sudden, the grins and the giggles and the standing to look out the window have turned into sitting on the couch, talking, taking off their high heels, rubbing their feet. Chatter has gone quiet. They're just scrolling Snapchat. Somebody says, is there any Diet Coke left in the fridge? And pretty soon, they all drift off to sleep because the bridegroom took longer getting there than they thought it would. He said, I'm going to be there. They all got ready, but then he didn't show up in the amount of time they thought he would. So they all kind of drift off doing other things, and the next thing you know, it's late at night, and they're all asleep. Verse 6. At midnight, the cry rang out, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him. And then all the virgins woke up and they trimmed their lamps. And the foolish ones said to the wise, give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out. Now the lamp that they had would have looked something like this. There's a spot in the top where you pour oil, so you fill your jar with oil. They likely would have used olive oil. And you can see on the end of it there's a little piece of cloth. So they would cut a strip of cloth. They would jam it down into that hole, and it would lay back into it, and then light the end of that piece of cloth on fire. So it would wick the oil up into the end of that cloth. You light it, and that was their lamp. So all of the bridesmaids have these lamps. They've all come. They've shown up on time. The groomsman was longer than they thought he would be. The groom was longer than they thought he would be. And so they went to sleep with their lamps burning. All of a sudden, somebody says, "Hey, he's here. He's right outside. He's on his way. Get ready." And all of them rouse. They straighten their hair. They get their makeup put on, and then they go out. But all of a sudden, there are 5 of the 10 that recognize, "Oh, man, all of my oil is gone out of my lamp. The wick is still just barely burning, but it's not going to burn for much longer." And so they ask the others, "Can we have some of your oil?" It's like, I had one job to do, and I didn't get it done. I'm in trouble. So the wise bridesmaids, the ones who have the extra oil, like, can we have, foolish ones asking, "Can we have some of yours?" The wise ones, verse 9, no. "Hey, I'm almost out of oil. You've got extra. Can I have some of yours?" No. Bridesmaids aren't getting along. I don't know what happened, but they're there waiting, getting bored. One of them starts dissing the other one's boyfriend. I don't know. That's not really what happened. They explain, "There may not be enough for both us and you." It's like, look, if we give you some of ours, then we might run out, and then we all run out, and then there's no one to light the way for the groom to come. So they say, "Go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." So these 5 rush out to make a purchase. So they all jump in to their old 73 Ford Pinto. They pile in. They're headed to Walmart because Walmart stays open all night. "Can we get some oil here?" But while they're on their way, verse 10, the bridegroom arrived. And the virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other 5, also show up. "Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you." And he wouldn't let them in. And here comes the point that Jesus was making. "Therefore, because you do not know the day or the hour, keep watch." Be ready. See, this is what Jesus is talking about through this entire chapter 24 and 25. Disciples want to know, when's the end of time going to come? When are you going to return? When is this all going to be over? When is everybody going to be judged? We want to know when that's going to happen. And Jesus just keeps telling them the time that it happens is not the relevant question. It's just a matter of be ready no matter when it happens. So this whole story about the groom and the bridesmaids, he's telling them, look, 5 of them were ready because they prepared ahead of time. The other 5 were not ready. It caught them off guard. So Jesus is using this to tell us about his return. And what he's saying is that his return is going to take longer than we expect it will. 2,000 years ago, Jesus left and he told his disciples, "I'll be back." And in the beginning, they were all really excited about his return. He said he's going to be back. Let's be ready. Let's have everything shaped up. But then he didn't come back as soon as they thought he would. Generations have come and generations have gone, and now people aren't paying any attention to the return of Jesus, when it's going to happen. And a lot of people are not ready. There are going to be a lot of people unprepared for that day when he does show up, because when he comes back, it's going to be unexpected. And all of a sudden, they're going to be shut out from heaven, and they're going to be knocking on the door and saying, "Let us in." And he's going to be saying, "I don't know you." Now, I think it's interesting in this story that all the bridesmaids fall asleep, all of them, not just the 5 foolish ones. It wasn't like the 5 foolish ones went to sleep and the others stayed awake. They're on guard the whole time. They went to sleep too. I wonder if this is because asleep is a euphemism for death. And what he's saying is that everybody's going to die. The question is, are you prepared when you fall asleep? Did you get things taken care of ahead of time? See, the 5 foolish ones they weren't prepared for it. They weren't prepared for falling asleep. They weren't prepared for the long time. And so when they fell asleep, when they died, they weren't ready for the groom to come back. But the other 5, the wise ones, had made preparation ahead of time. And so they also fell asleep. They died. But when the groom returned, they were ready. Is that the point that he's making with all of them falling asleep? So this is the point that Jesus is telling us. We just need to be ready before we die. Because after we die, it's too late. So there's a difference between foolish people and wise people getting ready for Jesus' return. Foolish people say things like, I'll get ready later. I'll get ready for the return of Jesus later. He said he was going to be back. It's been a long time. 2,000 years, generations have come, generations have gone. What's the likelihood that he's going to come back in my lifetime? Pretty slim. 1,000 years is like a day. Day is like 1,000 years. To Jesus, it's only been like a couple of days. That's not very long. Surely he'll wait a lot longer than that. I've got time. Foolish people say, I'll wait until later. I'll get ready someday, but not today, because right now I'm living my life, I'm having fun. Later on, I'll get this taken care of. But the thing is, we don't know when that day is going to be. It's going to catch us off guard, whether that be Jesus' return or our death. Because after we die, there's no time left to prepare. Foolish people say things like, I'll get baptized later. Later. I want to. I've been thinking about it. I've talked about it. I've explored it. Yes, I want to do that, but not today. I've got years left. I'm young at this point in my life. Maybe I'll do that sometime later, after. But we don't know when that moment's going to come for us. And when the moment comes, then there's no time left to prepare. Foolish people say things like, I'll go back to church someday. I used to go when I was a kid. My parents took me, my grandparents took me, my neighbors took me, somebody it was. I used to go, now I got off on my own, I'm not going anymore. But one of these days, I want to go back to church. But what if one day never arrives? What if you fall asleep before then? Because once you fall asleep, all time for preparation has passed. And then you're shut out from the kingdom of God. We always think we're going to have more time. I'm going to have more time before Jesus returns. I'm going to have more time before I die. And often we do. I think that's what makes it so hard, is that often we do. I'm going to have more time. And you've been saying that for 10 years, 30 years, and you've always been right so far. But one of these days, you're not going to be right any longer. There will come a day that we don't have more time. Whether that be Jesus' return or our death, that time is going to run out, and that day is going to surprise us. In Matthew 24, verse 36, Jesus said, about that day or hour, nobody knows, not even the angels in heaven or the Son, only the Father knows. And then he says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were going about life. They were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage up to the day that Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what was about to happen until the flood came and took them all away. And that's how it'll be at the coming of the Son of Man. So what he's saying is, in the days of Noah, everybody was just living their life. They were just going about doing their normal things. They were going to school, they were going to work, they were getting married, they were cooking dinner, they were going to sports practice. They were doing just their normal routine of life, and all of a sudden the flood came and caught them all off guard. And he says that's how it's going to be when Jesus returns. People are going to be living life, just going about doing their normal things that they do, and then there's going to be Jesus. There's going to be the end of life. Suddenly it's over, and how we prepared up to that moment is what's going to matter. Because we have second chances all through life. But when this life is over, that's where second chances end. A few years ago, some of you might remember this, there was a news story about an emergency alert going out to the residences of Hawaii. Like everybody received an emergency alert on their phone, and the alert said, "A ballistic missile is inbound. Seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill." Every resident of Hawaii got this message on their phone that there was a nuclear missile in the air headed to Hawaii, and it was going to strike very soon. And so everybody was panicking. What made this alert so believable, so like if you and I got this alert today, we'd probably look at it and go, what in the world? This doesn't make any sense. This has got to be a mistake. Did you get this on your phone? Yeah, I got it too. Yeah, I got it. I don't believe this. What made this so believable in Hawaii at that time was that the media had been reporting about rising tensions between the United States and North Korea. And both of them had publicly said, we have nuclear missiles that we can fire at you. So North Korea had said, we can fire at you, we can fire at Hawaii. This danger was so real that the University of Hawaii had sent out an email to all of their students giving instructions about what to do in a nuclear attack. Only a month earlier, the state of Hawaii had tested their nuclear threat siren for the first time in 30 years. So this had been well publicized. The possibility was there. And so thousands of people thought their lives were coming to an end. And phone lines were jammed as people were trying to call family members. They called to say, I love you. They were sending texts to say, I'm sorry. They were calling the mainland to talk to their attorneys to make sure their final wishes were in order. It turned out to be a false alarm. The message was a mistake. It was a trial run that they were running in their systems that wasn't actually supposed to go out, but it did. But the retraction of that to say, we're sorry, this was a mistake, came 38 minutes later. And so for 38 minutes, all the residents of Hawaii thought that their lives were coming to an end very shortly. When the second message came out that it was a mistake, a lot of people were angry. In fact, one resident who was interviewed said those 38 minutes were the most terrifying of my life. I thought I was going to die. I thought my family was going to die. I thought my friends were going to die. It was all torture. And he said when that second message came out that it was a mistake, he said, at first I was angry. And we often respond that way to fear, don't we? If somebody scares us, at first there's the fright, and then that fright turns into anger. You know, they pull a practical joke on you, they jump out from behind the door, scare you, you're scared, then you're angry at them, you punch them. He said, that's what I was feeling. He said, at first I was angry. But he said, after I had some time to reflect on it, I came to see it as a gift. And he said, I was reminded that there will be an end to my life and it could come at any moment. That's kind of a good reminder for all of us, isn't it? The end of our life could come at any moment. I read about a guy who was diagnosed with brain cancer and his prognosis wasn't good. He was wasting away day by day, and somebody asked him, what's it like to wake up each day knowing that today could be your last? And he laughed at him and said, I don't know, you tell me. Because whether we have brain cancer or there is an inbound missile or we just got a clean bill of health from our doctor, every day could be our last. It is the reality. And so the question that we need to be asking is not, when will the last day be? The question is, am I ready every day for the last day? And so maybe some of you are not. Maybe you've never been baptized. You've never had your sin washed away. If that's the case, why not make today the day? So that you can be ready no matter what day it comes. Maybe some of you did that a long time ago, but your life has gone the wrong direction, away from the Lord. You have run out of oil. You're not prepared. Why not today repent? Seek the forgiveness that God offers. And be ready. Pray with me. Father, I think it's easy for us to be lulled into a sense of complacency, where we believe tomorrow will always come. I pray that you would remind us that it won't, and lead us to be ready for that day. In Christ's name, amen.